Go on, try it.
No, thanks.
Oh, come on, you've turned on before.
Have you heard the word about the herb superb? You can take it from an knocker like me. You take one toke for a bit of a joke. You're out of your coolibah tree. Then the bloke next door wants to call the cops 'cause you smile and you're feeling happy. So you plant a few seeds and you grow a few weeds and the world don't look so crappy. Talk about marijuana, Australiana.
He has had one seizure this morning, but that's because we were travelling and he couldn't get his dose. So as long as he gets it every 3 hours, if he stopped and he missed a dose, he'd start seeing seizures. It's making a big difference to him, just not having seizures every day, all day. But yes, you can imagine having 30 seizures a day. All right, now open, under your tongue.
This is a critical thing with patients, that the medicine has to go to them for free. There's no financial gain by anybody. And most Australians don't know about this group of people who are doing this compassionate healing.
For a country that considers itself civilised, Australia is barbarous the way it treats the issue of medicinal cannabis.
A very emotional, emotive area, politically very divided.
For a number of conditions, evidence is crystal clear. We know it works. We know that it's effective. We know that it provides relief for people suffering a range of symptoms, and we're still treating people like criminals who need to access it.
To judge people and try and make them use your pills instead of their herbs is a tragic mistake.
Historically, humans, if they tried to understand the creation as ego evolved, ego went, whoa, here I am. The backbone has been plant sacraments, drugs from plants.
Under Prohibition, we've got younger people smoking more cannabis more often at a higher potency. It hasn't worked.
It takes a lot of propaganda to maintain people keep judging potheads, and the government's done it.
We have to remember that the whole history of cannabis prohibition, it's based on falsehood.
The Hunter Valley infestation is a wild cannabis crop which seems to have existed in the Hunter Valley for well over 100 years. It's over hundreds of acres. Once it's discovered, there's all this sensational stuff in the papers about this sort of huge sex drug. A Mexican drug that drives men and women to the wildest sexual excesses has made its first appearances in Australia. It distorts moral values and leads to degrading sexual extravagances. It is called marijuana. By the 1960s, it's the time of free love. To sort of talk about it, an evil sex drug doesn't scare the kids very much. They're all wanting to go out and try it. And they're the first cannabis smokers, the first marijuana smokers in Australia.
I was a young man at the time. Cannabis had been discovered growing wild in the Hunter Valley. Once that was publicised and the authorities told us what a terrible, dangerous sex drug it was, we of course all got straight in our cars and drove up to Maitland to see if we could get some. We were very successful. We found lots and lots. The unsuccessful part is we found it was not a sex drug at all. By 1970, the combined efforts of the Department of Agriculture and people like myself eradicated the plant in the Hunter Valley. This unfortunately brought the wrath of the authorities down on our heads. I myself was jailed for 6 months at East Maitland Jail in 1968 for simply picking a few plants that were growing wild on the banks of the Hunter River.
Australia is intensely divided at that stage. Marijuana sort of becomes the symbol of the conflict of generations in the 1970s.
My old man will blow his top. So what does he do for kicks? How can he tell me? I mean, like, how can he really expect me to take notice of him?
Rita, think I want to end up a junkie?
Marijuana and cannabis become a way for the older generation to crack down on the baby boomer generation. They import the politics of the war on drugs from Richard Nixon. A few cigarettes containing marijuana, the drug which causes its victims to behave like raving sex maniacs and has made pathetic slaves of thousands of young Americans, have been smoked at recent parties in Sydney. They're aware it's not a new drug, and they're aware that it's the drug they've been using for many decades. This is the fabulous Dr. Poppy's Wonder Elixir with cannabis extract, guaranteed to relieve symptoms and leave a pleasant feeling that lasts all day. Before cannabis prohibition, cannabis was a very widely used medicine, but it was always called cannabis indica. So it's the renaming of cannabis indica as marijuana which is the basis of cannabis prohibition. By demonising it as marijuana, they're effectively able to ban it.
I'm involved with the medical cannabis movement here in Australia and the push for drug law reform. I work quietly here with various people around the world and also here in Australia. And I guess my mission statement in life is to help bring healing to people using medical cannabis. Back in the 70s, I was offered a job driving motor vehicles from Germany to Iran, and it seemed like a pretty good idea. It was in the direction that I was going to come back to Australia. So I signed up, and unfortunately, about 100 kilometres short of Istanbul, I was pulled over by the Turkish police and very, very quickly found myself in a period of incarceration, a whole world of misery. My experiences in Turkey were beyond what most people should ever have to see. And in the 1980s, the onset of post-traumatic stress disorder started to manifest. And everything that I knew in my life started to come apart. I'd pretty well lost everything, and life for me became dreadful. And I started to see some reports about post-traumatic stress disorder in cannabis, scientific peer-reviewed studies supporting the medical use of cannabis. I then was invited to go to the Nimbin Mardi Gras. Going to Nimbin was an extraordinary event for me. That weekend, my life changed for the better. And how it changed was that I met Tony Bauer. With his medicine, he was giving it away for free. And I found that a profound thing to do. Now, cannabis tincture is a non-psychoactive medicine, and you have very, very quick relief for the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And this, for me, was remarkable.
I founded the company a few years ago because I could develop a medicine. I decided to get the medicines out to people, and basically that's what I've been doing. I suppose it just goes to show how much it costs to make it, you know, when a disabled pensioner can look after hundreds of people at no cost. I have people coming to me that the doctor's given up on them and they've got a month to live. They're still coming back 6, 8 months later and they're fine.
Okay, Hunter. Okay. The first time that Hunter had a seizure, he was 48 hours old. Because he was having so many seizures every day, the damage to his brain was quite severe. So he was in heaps of studies all around the world for all different things. And then someone turned up that he had Dravet syndrome. Hunter's the most severe that they can find documented. It's basically like a newborn baby. But 9 years of age, I first came across people talking about it on the Drave support page online. A mother mentioned that her child had started on it and her child was just getting better and better and seizure-free and toilet trained and speaking. That mum put me onto the gentleman she got it from, and he was so happy to put us on the list and send us a trial. I told him I wanted to drive up there and hug him for saving my son's life, because pretty much that's how I feel, is that he saved my son's life. Putting yourself out there, you put yourself at risk, but he just saved my son's life.
Time to put medical cannabis on the agenda. Let us choose our own medicine. We want our own relationship with nature. Change the law, please. Limpert, where we come from, has turned into a refugee camp from the war on drugs.
It's time for this government and for all governments around Australia to drop the hysteria, to assess this drug as it is, to see whether it has the benefits that it claimed, and if it does, then we should go ahead and it should be used as a therapeutic substance.
Hunter, when he was in hospital for 7 months, was 100% because of a drug. Hard drugs that his pharmacist said to me would knock out a giant elephant is what my son is getting 3 times a day. And now he's on this, which is so much better for you. I don't even understand why it would be illegal.
THC is the primary psychoactive constituent of cannabis plant matter. THC is what makes us stoned. It's psychoactive, it affects our psyche, our cognition, our mood, our emotions. Recently, there's been a lot of growing interest in another cannabinoid in cannabis plant matter called cannabidiol, or abbreviated as CBD. CBD has anti-anxiety properties, it has some antipsychotic properties.
CBD is usually found in higher concentrations in hemp production. Its introduction into other seed varieties has fused together 2 aspects of the cannabis plant which don't normally occur naturally, but are very beneficial to people who require a bit of extra help relieving pain and other symptoms of their diseases.
CBD works very well with epilepsy, so I just want to give that a go and see if it makes a difference. Just have to change the strain that he's using and see if a different strain works a little bit better.
Now that there is this awareness of CBD, it's interesting how quickly the street level markets jump on the bandwagon of those kinds of facts from science. And the other interesting thing that happened was a major discovery of the internal endogenous cannabinoid system, so that we have natural brain chemicals that act like THC. So anandamide is the primary one, and anandamide is a Sanskrit word meaning eternal bliss. But we still don't know enough about the role of that entire cannabis system in the brain. Why do we have it? Why does it exist?
You know, it seems that humans and the cannabis plant have been linked forever. It was such a big part of human life, so our brains have developed accordingly.
This is a very important physiological system, and it's been with us throughout evolution. When THC is ingested from cannabis plant matter, it floods that system and impacts upon learning and memory and mood and emotion and perception and multiple other functions. But of course, we don't just have those receptors so that we can go out and smoke a plant that grows in our environment.
Humans are designed to use cannabis. This is why we have an endocannabinoid system. We produce our own. There's endocannabinoids in mother's milk. Cannabinoids are there in the mother's milk because it's designed to give the babies the munchies. It's designed to make them hungry, to make them suckle, to flourish.
Cannabinoids are naturally occurring in the human brain, and to supplement their brain chemistry with organically grown cannabis is a positive thing. It gives people a physical, spiritual and enlightenment which other plants like the coffee plant or like the grape plant for producing wines, do not give you.
Man, honestly, I love the blaze. Love to get fucked up, then I stuff my face. Every day it's wake and bake, so after breakfast, all I do is make mistakes.
So I remember I was sitting at a friend's place. They were like, do you want to have a cone? You know, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll try it out. About 15, I think I was. I was just like, that was sick. I've been drunk before and I feel better. Like, I didn't wake up with a hangover or anything. I didn't know if you do or didn't know, but I'm stoned right now. Did you know it? Did you know I was stoned right now?
Yeah.
The sativa plant is generally a very high where you can still function quite nicely. Whereas if you want to have the layout properties of stuff they usually use for hydroponic growing, you probably want to get into some sort of indica. And the difference is, it's like either having a really nice glass of beer or smashing down 2 bottles of scotch.
The move towards hydroponic production of cannabis has been driven by the prohibition of cannabis. After all, why else would people want to set up these very expensive and elaborate laboratories to produce cannabis if it were not to evade detection by law enforcement authorities?
Hydro production, as opposed to what happens on the north coast of New South Wales here, is really 2 different things. On the north coast, they don't like chemicals and they don't like to grow under lights because it's a natural herb which grows out in the full sunshine.
I've been living up here in northern New South Wales all my life, and I've been growing marijuana for 27 years now, making money out of it, trying to work out how to do it, you know. And I've been to jail for growing pot 17 years ago. Threw me in jail for they charged me with growing $16 million worth of pot. You know, it's bloody bullshit.
I got busted with 8,000 marijuana seedlings, which the cops value at $2,000 per plant, which meant I was in possession of $16 million worth of dope. What fucking bullshit. Prison changed my life forever. Prison was full of blokes just like me, battlers trying to get ahead, just making a few dollars out of Australia's biggest cash crop, marijuana. While I was in prison, all I thought about was how to grow marijuana better, smarter and higher.
I got out of jail, had an idea to write me book and DVD, show people how to grow marijuana and make money, survive.
My slogan would be, sow the seed, grow the weed. And that is exactly what I did.
Plant will let you grow it and make money out of it if so be it.
Certainly thousands and possibly tens of thousands. There's a lot of Australians grow pot. Very few are organised crime. They're what's generally referred to as disorganised crime.
I was starting to get a bit greedy. That's why I had like a tray of like 8,000 little seedlings in them, you know. At the time, sort of mind plays tricks on you, you know. I wanted to grow a ton of pot, you know, like $1 million.
The fact that cannabis is produced essentially by criminals and corrupt police means that we have, by default, given them the controls over the market. So they have the controls over quality, they have the controls over contamination. The stronger the enforcement of a prohibition, the more concentrated the drug that's prohibited becomes. They have the controls over whether the THC level is going higher and higher.
With all of the breeding of hydroponic strains and high-potency THC strains, some studies have started to show a greater risk of developing a psychosis.
Looks like we've bred a new type of pot that's full of THC but not so many of the CBDs, which is also the antipsychotic bit.
The more those concerns seem to be valid, the stronger the argument that the state should actually be regulating cannabis.
So I do think it is a public health risk to be breeding the high-potency THC and for that to be the predominant form of cannabis on the market in Australia.
There's no consumer information provided to a commodity that is consumed by 2 to 3 million Australians every year. I don't know how anyone could justify that. The more arguments you look at for cannabis, the stronger the arguments become.
I don't think I would go so far as to suggesting that we should regulate the production of cannabis in any way.
Pot causes psychosis. Hey, if it does, well, shouldn't you treat it as a medical issue? Shouldn't we take the criminal element out of it, eh? Half the jails are full of people with mental health problems, though.
People with psychosis, they use all the illicit drugs very heavily. We don't know whether there is in fact some benefit they're actually gaining from their illicit drug use.
So we're going to try to understand how THC might trigger a psychosis and what makes a person vulnerable. And on the other hand, what is it about CBD? How does CBD act to ameliorate some of those psychotic-like symptoms?
I think CBD is a very interesting cannabinoid, and it may well have a role to play, not as a smoked herbal product, but delivered in safer ways and in known doses with known purity and known absence of contaminants in the management of anxiety and perhaps in psychosis.
Cannabis has lineages. You have cannabis sativa,
which is native to India. Cannabis sativa has been selected both for narcotic and fiber. Sativa is a much taller growing plant. It can get up to 5-6 meters.
You then have the short, squat, high mountain varieties that come from Afghanistan, which is your classic cannabis indica.
Cannabis indica, it's always been grown and selected for narcotic quality.
Cannabis breeding is definitely something which is akin to getting a new perfume on the market or producing a new cheese or wine.
Some have got fuely, woody smells, sweet, piney. Some of them just smell unreal. Nothing like any other flower out there, that's for sure. My style of breeding is the plant whisperer. If the plant doesn't whisper back to me, it's gone, that's it.
Now, this capacity to design plants is invaluable when you're marrying up the hippie culture with the scientific culture and people who are skilled in applying those individual strains for specific illnesses. There is that much flexibility in this plant to be able to do that. Now, as far as my own situation with post-traumatic stress disorder, I began looking for strains that were high in a particular aromatic that I could use to control my dreaming issues, my anxiety issues, and also my pain issues.
He said, I don't know about you, but I'm going hydro. You just stick them in these little plastic pots. Just add a bit of feed and they grow like buggery. He said, don't know about you, but I'm going hydro.
Here we go. It's a rare opportunity to have an insight into a medical garden. In this case, to treat pain and sleep issues, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, also to cope with dreaming issues. And this is chocolate orange. This has been bred specifically for pain and sleep. This is the Autoraptor, which is a 50-50 expression of the indica and the sativa. Now, with post-traumatic stress disorder, it's very important to control the nightmares and the night terrors that can confront patients. So this is where these indica-dominant strains are very, very helpful. They disrupt the process of memory while you're sleeping, so you feel quite refreshed as if you've had a good night's sleep. It's a very rare opportunity that you have to be able to step into a patient's medical cannabis garden.
In the forest you bring green, reflect.
Pristine medicine before it goes through the process of preparation for the patient to use.
Quite a few people have used my cannabis in a palliative care situation. Their families have reported back to me to say that it was absolutely fantastic. Their quality of life improved considerably. I do not charge any money or anything else for my medical cannabis. If somebody has a terminal illness and they approach me, I'm quite willing to supply them with a reasonable quantity to help them end their days, and it brings me a joy in my heart to be the grower and the breeder that can make it all possible.
But this aspect is underground because of prohibition, and we're stifling some brilliant work that could be done to develop this as a plant, as a medicine.
The illegal nature has suppressed the ability to develop more Epicurean lines.
G'day, my name's Kangativa and I'm about to introduce you to the world of breeding and growing giant Australian sativas. Unfortunately, Australia is one of the only places where you can really push good sativas to their limit in this sort of subtropical environment. Yeah, it's what you've got to put up with sometimes when they get big and a bit top heavy. Pretty hammered. Just brings tears to your eyes every time. This is Californian skunk with a Californian haze. And here we have a Oaxacan bred to mango haze. Here we have a giant Hmong Thai from the northern parts of Thailand. Native marsupials seem to think that it's an actual tree. Possums gone up there and come for a big slide back down and taken most of the branches out. This plant's only just starting to flower now, and it's possible it could be another 3 months before it's fully flowered, but this would be a giant put out in full sun. I reckon this is only a baby to what it could be. And you just don't see them anymore. Someone shows a photo on the internet and it's about 3 foot tall and that's it. There you have it, a breeding centre in the Australiana sunshine. All organically grown. Nothing better. Way better than indoor stuff. Unfortunately, I have to dress a little bit like Ned Kelly because of the laws. Getting caught in situations like this put us automatically in jail, and having been in jail, it's not worth it. And it's a shame, you know, it's a shame it's illegal and they're going to get you for doing your passion. You're not hurting anyone. Never hurt anyone in all my life, you know, and I've been smoking since I was 16.
Like a fat joint, cover the hole. When I get old, I'll be on the dole.
Australians like cannabis per capita more than any other place in the world. Stereotypically, doing orchie bottle bongs on a lounge with bong water spilt on the floor. Yeah, there is that element.
There's certainly a stereotype, vaguely sort of hippie-ish, lentil chunks falling off them, but in the end that's bullshit. It's a massive multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a mass market product. It's used by millions of people.
Some people like it, some people don't. Some people really shouldn't be smoking.
Yes, definitely. Hunter's father is a very heavy pot smoker. I was like, say he's a loser, but I shouldn't do that in camera. Well, he's got no life. He spends his whole life smoking marijuana.
Smoking bongs is fucking guaranteed to make you smarter. Blaze up the bowl, raid your mum's larder.
He will roll out of bed in the morning before he's even put his feet on the ground. He's had 3 or 4 cones, which to me is just disgusting.
My mum fucking hates the smell.
Someone who's just had a big hit off a bucket, they're the very definition of a half-assed human being.
This image of pot just turns you into a vegetable. Mate, pot's probably got people sitting there thinking. They're dreaming, they're thinking, and they're probably shocked at the conclusions they come to. So you've got to go back and check it again.
People who are attracted to using cannabis may have alternative patterns of thinking, alternative lifestyles. Our sample of users were functioning in the community. Nevertheless, they developed subclinical psychotic-like symptoms. So this included things like a little more than just odd beliefs, some rather strange beliefs. People with schizophrenia also have interesting ideas, including odd beliefs.
Yeah, g'day, this is the highest part of my farm. This is my power spot. I've lived here before in a past life. I probably actually stood here hundreds of years ago as a blackfella. I can connect with those sorts of energies on this spot. I can remember.
And his mind was fucked. he just sat around and packed the bong all day. Bong! Well, he'd get one ready the night before, so in the morning when his feet hit the floor, he could have a cone before he'd had a piss. 100 cone Billy.
I had a good stint on the bong. Everybody loves ripping a cone. Just about anybody in my age has definitely punched cones, would punch a cone, and has no problem punching a cone, you know? I reckon I was smoking like a shitload of bongs.
In Canada, they'll get the ones with 5 percolators and the ice catcher and the ash catcher. It's much simpler. Hear what I've seen so far?
Billy Wonka with an everlasting bowl full. If the cone clogged, then I use my stove tool. A stone fool, no clue, it's a doku. That's not a throat, it's the hole that I smoke through.
We're concerned here at the museum with how people make and design things. So we often have items of high craft and high design in here, but we're also concerned, I guess, what you might call a making-do culture, and items of vernacular culture, not high-end culture. And this is a prime example. Well, this is item number 2000/25/1, and it's a plastic homemade bong, an item for smoking marijuana. It's a discarded bottle, and it's had a piece of hose removed probably from somebody's garden, I would suggest at their annoyance.
Garden hoses were constantly shrinking through the 70s and 80s as kids came and took the ends off them.
It would have been filled with water, and there's plenty of evidence of its use on the inside of the bottle. The most commonly used bottles, I understand, are orchie bottles, and so the bongs are often called orchie bongs. I'm not sure what that did for the marketing of orchie orange juice.
You don't see them so much now, so I guess that speaks to the sophistication of modern youth. I don't know that Orchie even makes plastic bottles anymore, probably for this very reason.
This museum, we're concerned with innovation and how people, design and make things. And this is an example of vernacular design and construction, part of our daily culture. And indeed, it was found in a gutter. I would suggest it's natural habitat.
From a harm reduction point of view, if you're not going to use a vaporizer, then definitely smoking out of glass is the way to go over any kind of plastic.
You can swap a hammer for pot. Simply take a hammer and smash your bong to pieces. By removing your bong, you remove the temptation to use.
So I take it then that what you're saying is that you're uncomfortable with the idea of individuals being allowed to grow their own plants for medicinal cannabis supply, but you're less uncomfortable with the idea of cannabis being provided, provided it's done so in a regulated fashion.
Yes. Any form of cannabis needs to be in a pharmaceutical form that's gone through the rigours of pharmaceutical examinations, and it's a drug that is going to be therapeutic for the patient and not cause cancer and not cause mental illness, and if that's in fact what it does cause.
If it's a choice between going out and purchasing a pharmaceutical or just putting a seed in the ground, right, I know which one I'd do.
I get hundreds and hundreds of emails every week from people that are dying. Their kids are dying, their brothers, their fathers. Something needs to be done.
There's a town in the hills where the jokers all go. There's a plan in the town that the smokers all grow. It's against the law, but the coppers all know. Up in the roaring hills of Nimbin.
Nimbin. Pretty interesting. It's changed so much from the original vision. Now it's a tourist attraction. We've all got similar stories. We all have these journeys and something happened, often drug-related, which opened the doors. And it's like, whoa, what do I do now? Difficult. So a lot of us thought, we'll go back to living on a commune, come up here and find a way to live in harmony with nature and each other again. Pot smokers gathered on the north coast, and particularly Nimbin, for the last 40 years now. Part of the simple living for a lot of us is having a nice joint.
Cannabis has been our sacrament in Nimbin for 30 years. It is the herb that opens our minds, opens our spirit and opens our heart.
Nimbin, like any place with a lot of hippies, it has its issues.
There are constant operations in the Nimbin community. We do deal with a lot of cannabis-related issues, drug-related crime, and property-related crime in relation to the drug-related crime. They randomly drug test drivers, and we've got our own police dogs up here, a general purpose dog and a drug detection dog.
I think the cops have used Nimbin as a training ground for a long time. They're coming down ropes in their military outfit into hippie communes. If you've had a chopper hovering over your house, the animals go berserk, the kids are under the bed. It's absolutely terrifying. It is war.
And small amount of cannabis.
They insist on coming with tasers and guns. Absolutely terrifying for people.
Yeah, it's got 295. Can you explain to me where you got that money?
Police will sometimes go to extraordinary lengths to catch a person who is not a producer, not a distributor, but just a user of cannabis. The use of sniffer dogs is a classic example.
A bag of cannabis located underneath the table. Can you tell me about this cannabis?
The use of police resources in that way does raise questions.
What? This is just spare cash that I carry with me anyway. I've got no money. Well, you don't go to Nimbin to buy drugs, do you?
Do we really want the police to use their time and effort and sniffer dogs on these sorts of minor cannabis users?
What we're going to do now is put the drug detection dog through the premises.
Just found a butt on the floor. Obviously indicated on a plastic bag of cannabis located inside a bin. Residue on top of the table as well. Dog's indicating on 2 bongs located near the stairs. There's a whole bit of residue on some scissors in a bong. There's a whole bit of residue on the table. There you go, mate. You want to step out here for a second? Put your hands together like that for me. Just walk out to the police here.
Polite Force came after the big raids. Just another brilliant idea that's come out of Nimbin. And, you know, you get so many good ideas smoking good weed, it's hard to put them all into action. Hippies look such a rabble, we thought we'll put them in uniform. Absolutely mimic the police and show them how they should be. Hey, they should be polite.
Form of flattery, I suppose. Meant in good nature, I suppose. They come out at Mardi Gras time.
Happy Mardi Gras!
Happy Mardi Gras!
Some of our local people who need to use medical cannabis, they're on bikes or wheelchairs. Mardi Gras is simply about ending us being criminals for using cannabis, and we'll keep doing it until the laws change.
Stop treating us like clowns! We're not criminals!
It became so big, the cops asked us to get everyone off the street, so we created the Hemp Olympics.
Andrew from Canada, David from Newcastle and Felix from Korea. If you could come to the mustering station, do a bit of professional bong chucking in Sydney?
Yeah, here and there.
Yeah, so you're all warmed up, ready for this?
Yeah, mate.
You know the rules? Put the bong in the bucket and yell. Oh! Smoke the bong.
Smoke weed everywhere!
It's about style, it's about finesse, it's about being the bong. On your marks, get set, roll. Here they go, folks. The first heats of the blind joint rolling. This is the skill and art of joint rolling in the dark.
It wasn't just a bunch of stoners sitting around chuffing on, talking about how they were going to stick it to the man. There was a conference associated with it. You got a lot of academics and drug researchers came in. A lot of lawyers came in to talk about drug law reform. It's an example of what is possible when you separate out all the shit that comes with drug culture.
And admittedly, there are a lot of rainbows around and banners, but that's what a festival is. It's the theatre. And
In the drug war, part of our propaganda from our culture is this theatre of Mardi Gras.
How I love those Nimbin country Sheilas, goddesses in three-part harmony, far away from the noise and the wheeler dealers. Stone the crows, it's Nimbin girls for me. Oh, how I love those Nimbin country Sheilas, goddesses in three-part harmony, far away from the noise and the wheeler dealers. Stone the crows, it's Nimbin girls for me.
Gotcha fairies, we love you.
We're at the front of Nimbin Police Station on Mardi Gras weekend. Police have come from all local area commands in the northern region, as well as utilising our own operational support group.
By the end of the weekend, some of them wanted to join in, I think. They had such a good time.
So you help me legalise marijuana? Not yet? Tomorrow? Maybe, okay.
Massive resources they've put into killing off the cannabis culture in Nimbin.
Areas like Nimbin, for example, have a festival where clearly the police know that there's a huge amount of cannabis and the use of cannabis going on, but they won't really try and close it down completely. Instead, what they try and do is to have the odd arrest, the show of force, just to symbolise to the public that they're doing something, when in fact they're really doing nothing.
The drug war is actually a phony war. It's there to keep the Wowsers happy. It's fought in Nimbin to maintain an illusion of a war.
But that puts everyone in a limbo. It's unsatisfactory, both from the police's point of view, and of course it affects the Nimbin people.
In the late 80s, it was serviced by one policeman.
We've now got 9 police in Nimbin. We've got cameras on the street live to the cop shop. It's just a full-on hunt for cannabis or cannabis dealers.
They haven't changed anything. There's still open dealing going on. They make a few more arrests. They harass people more.
The saddest thing that I've seen here in Nimbin is watching the dealers. Young kids who grew up here, mate. You know, grew up with nothing. The new generation, you fucking idiots, you're giving your weed away to everyone, sharing it with your mates. So the kids start pinching it and selling it. That's how it began. You would have heard someone call taxi. Taxi is the call. You hear taxi, it's police. And you know, that's what it's come to. It's a game of cops and robbers now, which just engenders so much disrespect. There's the taxi call, so there's the cops coming. You hear that taxi call? Everyone will scatter.
You can hear the clapsticks. Ladies and gentlemen, a big cheer for the Bundjalung Nation who are leading this parade today.
The thing with Nimbin, you're offered an alternative. As a blackfella, living in cities and smoking yarndi, you're not fitting into society. You'll be a misfit or an outcast or a reject.
A lot of Aboriginals in Nimbin now here because they want to smoke pot. Their kids will deal yarndi, take all these risks because they're brave as. No respect for the police, don't blame them.
You can explain stolen cars when you get off. Mate, what the fuck? I haven't done nothing, mate. What? Well, no attitude. I had attitude. I was just sitting here. But there were 10 people here and you just walked straight to me out of everyone else.
Police generally in this country have a bad record. It's a history of it. I keep telling the hippies they will come and take your children away. They will make you be seen as unfit parents or whatever, just because you smoke a bit of yarndi. I'm a Queensland Murray, Birrigubba, my people. Another side is Kungaloo or or Gungaloo mob. With some of my older mob, my aunties and that, it took them a long time to say, oh, look, we see you fellas drinking and we see you smoking. Now, look, be quiet, you roosters. So, you fellas are happy when you're on Yandi, and we see you drinking, you want to argue and fight. We'd rather you smoke Yandi. Yous are easier to deal with, yous are more passive and peaceful. With the grog, you're ending up in jail, you're ending up with broken family, and you're arguing with your missus. It's up to each individual. You know, I can't say Yandi's good for... I can't say it's good for everybody, but I'll tell you what, it's certainly good for me.
Cannabis is an interesting thing because some communities see it as, you know, if you had the choice, they tell me, of people sniffing petrol, drinking alcohol or using cannabis, cannabis is the one that's going to make them a little bit sleepy and a little bit happy and relaxed.
I've been on grog. I've tried heroin. Not just tried it, I've been addicted to it. With Kuris and Murris, Aboriginal people or Indigenous people, when we're offered a lot of different substances, a lot of us will choose Nyandi.
You can go to communities where whole communities will be using, so not just the younger people and not just on the weekends recreationally, and it very much escalates to some of the users in terms of having a psychotic episode. It's quite distressing when you see an emergency evacuation happening.
If you've got a problem already, that Nyandi might enhance it. That mightn't calm it down, or the other 8 fellas might be all calm and they're going, yeah, this one's working. But one fella, he might be going, no, I'm hearing things. I never heard of psychosis from Nyandi. Right up through the 80s, you know, late 80s, we start hearing now. And then we start hearing about it through hydroponics. Herbs is a part of our culture. We're still using tea tree, eucalyptus, gumby. We had leaves on a bush that were used for contraceptives. There were roots and berries you could take that would fix you up. There were also ones you could use to take a person's life. If my old auntie or uncle said to me, here boy, you go there and you eat that berry, or you boil that leaf up and drink the juice, you'll all be better. I know it works, and I use it. That's why the Nyandi is, you know, it's just another herb. It's something that we would use culturally anyway. If you can give me a reason, a good arguable reason, why we shouldn't have Nyandi or why that person or this community shouldn't use it, I'm down for it. But if it's just propaganda like what's been pushed on us from the 50s and just this fear campaign, no.
Hey bro, you don't look so well. It's the ganja. I'm thinking about giving it up. You should go and talk to them Aboriginal alcohol and drug workers. They can help you. I'm not going to see them more. That's a shame, bro. That's what I thought too. But they really helped me to stop using ganja.
Aboriginal alcohol and other drug workers can help you stop using ganja. Strong spirit, strong mind.
So just bringing to the top of mind where people have got respiratory problems or mental health problems, just to ask the question, could it be the ganja? Cannabis use was not seen in these communities in the 70s. It wasn't until they were targeted by cannabis suppliers as a clear market where they could make money that cannabis was introduced to these communities.
Well, anywhere, any remote area, whether we're talking about black fellas or white fellas, you might be paying $30 to $40 a gram. Some places you might be paying $50. So it just depends on the availability.
I know when I first moved to some communities in remote NT, it was $50 for the same bag, and they tell me now it's $100 a bag.
It's not the growers or the dealers who are setting the price. It's the government and the police. They're forcing this high price of putting it into this white market. I won't use that word, black market. We use black in a positive way. So this white market of marijuana, of Nyandi, of ganja, of the herb, the price is pushed quite high.
It's why a lot of families bust up, because the bloke or the mother likes pot, so she spends $200 a week on pot or $300 a week on pot. That's a big hole out of the check.
Between 30 to 60% of a person's income was being spent on cannabis. People tell me that they're blending the cannabis with tobacco. A few people might smoke in a pipe, but more often they're not. They're smoking in a bucket bong, so they are getting that full hit with very little smoke lost. Ultimately, it's empowering communities to come up with local solutions. I think, is going to make a difference. So it can't be me, and it can't be some local non-Indigenous administrator.
When I go to my dealer for a baggie and that, I need to pay per bag like a panic attack. It's so good and I'm happy with that.
Most cannabis smokers in Australia, unlike those in New Zealand or America, mull up their cannabis with tobacco.
Just a shocking habit that's developed, and the government's totally irresponsible in not making people aware of it.
We should certainly be telling people who smoke cannabis not to mix cannabis with tobacco.
Cannabis, gateway drug to tobacco. They smoke a bong at 15 or 16 with their mates, mulled up with spin. And not only do you not get a clean stone from the pure cannabis, it's mixed up with all the chemicals and processing in tobacco.
I keep one brain cell to chop my weed up. My cone piece is the size of a teacup. It's not just at Christmas that I light my trees up. I smoke like it's medical.
School kids might smoke a few bongs for a few days. The next morning they're going to wake up craving nicotine. They think they're craving a bong.
Please, I'm asking you, Australia, I'm begging you, take the tobacco out of your joints, out of your bongs.
Pot's okay. It's non-addictive. It's only the beginning of the problem, man. Squares who call it a problem only show they don't know the first thing about it.
They say it's not addictive, marijuana, and I kind of agree and kind of don't. I smoke a lot of weed.
About 1 in 10 of those who ever use cannabis are going to go on to develop dependence on the drug.
The physiological side of the dependence is perhaps lesser than the psychological dependence, and the way that cannabis infiltrates every aspect of a person's life and becomes very ingrained makes it very hard to stop using.
Look, you control the weed, not the other way round. You want to kick the habit? Okay, you kick it. No risk. Sounds easy. For sure.
Then why do kids go on?
You all been reading the scare campaigns.
I had recently purchased the vaporizer. I don't use any tobacco in it, and I feel that addiction is gone.
In our studies next year, when we'll be administering THC and CBD, we'll be doing so through a volcano vaporizer, which is smokeless, so one inhales the vapors and gets an immediate effect without any of the adverse effects of smoking.
On the pump now, probably forever the damage to his stomach from the drug. Having the MC is so much better for us. It's natural and it's not going to cause the same sort of damage at all. Oh, you know that's don't you? Oh, no, Mum. Yeah, no. All right. Now open. Under your tongue. No, it tastes terrible. There you go. Oh, done. I felt sick to my stomach making the decision to do it, and I was nervous, and yeah, I was worried about people's response, but everybody knows I'm the worst when it comes to my judgment of cannabis and stuff, but I have to say, this has totally changed my mind. The drugs he was on for his behavioural they were making him stoned. They were doping him up to his eyeballs. He'd just fall asleep after every medication dose that he had. Now, after his medicinal cannabis, he's still wide awake, he's still very interactive and responsive. And he's starting to say mum more clearly, which he hasn't said for a while. So there's a lot of mum, which is good. All his team are on board. Every single doctor is happy that he's on it. Everybody I know wants to have it, and they want to have it for their child, every single one. It's that whole stigma and the scare that they're going to get in trouble for having it that's a concern for most parents.
While I understand that this committee is devoted to medicinal cannabis, that's right. I know. It's our stance that you can't divorce medicinal cannabis use from recreational cannabis use in our society, and to attempt to do so means that you're not approaching the issue in a realistic way.
Canberra, you got the good weed, there's no doubt about it.
Well, here we are at Parliament House in Canberra. We've got a good medicine join up and we're inhaling deeply for the cause. The Nimbin people are very, very clever in the way that they go about their activism. They're very, very strategic. You've got news cameras from all across the world and there's nobody else protesting except us. Now, we have these wonderful, loving, kind, intelligent people in Nimbin. They're hippies. People look at them with the beard, perhaps, and immediately there is a stigma and they don't listen to the message.
A lot of pot smokers won't put their head up. I mean, you want the cops on your door? You want to get busted? You want a criminal record? You want to lose your job? or your wife, or get kicked out of school. I understand why most people won't talk up about it, they're scared. So it's left to the poor old hippies who've got nothing much to lose. There shouldn't be hippies protesting change the cannabis laws.
People look at people who look like they're hippies and laid back, and instantly everyone goes, ugh, I don't want to support them. They need to have, I think we need to get people to realise that scientists are also doing this, professional parents, and they're not dabbling in drugs or smoking. It's basically just another medication.
What about the medical cannabis user who has a debilitating illness who are using a cannabis tincture? Are we going to put them in the same category because they're using cannabis as a drug? Do we consider them in that same stigma as we do with hippies?
I'd say to anybody who thinks that medical cannabis is just all about stoners and young people trying to get off their face, to rethink the issue, to be a little bit more compassionate.
Parents that I know who have got their children on the wait list are all hardworking professionals. They don't do drugs. I want it legalised so my son, he's not going to survive without it. It's that simple. He's going to have more seizures and they're going to end up killing him. So I'm a really big supporter of legalising it for medicinal use, not for everyday recreational use.
But one day, man with a gun, he come to town. He was sent up from the city to tear the ganja down. He had choppers in the air and spotters on the ground.
That's simple. That's why yous are here today. Yous are doing the corrupt work for the government. That's why yous are here. So I make medicines out of them. I give the medicines away to people freely. I don't charge any money. Every person that I give it to has the support of their doctor. They have given me a doctor's letter. I have them inside. They're dying. They have cancer, chronic pain.
Now, there appears to be a number of cannabis plants here.
I'll get in the middle of them here, mate, if you like.
All right, how many would be?
All these plants represent people that I help. Just do anything so that I can try and get this back to help these people. What I make is non-psychotropic. I could give you a gallon each. You could take it home and drink it. You should come back tomorrow and say, geez, I had a good night's sleep and I felt good, but that's about it.
Products such as yours would not in any way feed the recreational market.
No.
We're sitting around spending so much time discussing spending ever more money regarding the recreational drug that has the least harmful effect of any of them. You can put a ton of cannabis in a room, put a sign out the front saying, all you can eat, line up here, right? And you can have people come in until that ton is eaten and there will not be an individual that is harmed by it. There might be a few belly aches, there'd be a few green outs, but no one would be physically harmed by it.
It seems curious that we have a centre within the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre specifically devoted to cannabis when the harms from cannabis are really relatively minor compared with other drugs. I could understand a centre perhaps on alcohol or perhaps on tobacco, but a centre on cannabis is really a political decision.
The National Cannabis Prevention and Information Centre is not funded or focused on cannabis policy, and we don't seek to directly influence cannabis policy.
Hey, what do you reckon mates do when they don't get stoned together?
We don't comment on drug legislation. Our role is principally to critically review the research literature, the scientific literature, and to draw from that key messages.
Get high on life. Visit ncpic.org.au/quit.
Research directly is really a very small part of our centre. We've done quite a lot of work around working with cannabis users and their experience about treatment.
They would never talk to us. I don't think anyone from a government's ever rung up and said, well, what do you pot smokers think about this? Like, we're idiots. We don't get asked.
I know we've been criticised for not engaging with those groups. We haven't done a lot of that publicly, but we have been working with some of those agencies behind the scenes and talking with them.
Her legacy is going to be a sorry state of disinformation and disgruntled young people who are the target of her campaigns.
Using cannabis has been linked to negative effects on memory, learning and motivation. Are you struggling to keep your head above water?
It's all very, very focused and negative propaganda.
I know there are some people who have a view that, we're very prohibitionist. It's really up to us to, work together to make sure that we all have a common understanding. There's not a lot of research or need for research or focus on research about perceived positive effects of cannabis. We pretty well understand those.
Well, governments are very keen to fund any research which muddies the water about cannabis. What they don't like about cannabis is that it continually is shown to be either relatively harmless or extremely beneficial.
It's those messages about it being a medicine and it being safe that are those that are prevalent amongst the community.
People like Professor Copeland, these are the people who want to be remembered for things that they haven't done. Well, for somebody who wants to be remembered for things that they do, like Tony Bauer, Professor Copeland needs to lift a cheek and let somebody move past.
The helicopter come within feet. It nearly shook the caravans off the block. When I seen the helicopter coming, I grabbed me Mulloway's medical cannabis sign and stood out in the crop to make sure they knew it was a medical cannabis crop. I notified the government and I told them because there's so many people that I had to pick it up to 200 outdoors as well as 120 indoors. I never got any reply or any problem and nobody said you couldn't do it. I've been up to Nimbin since this, restocked everybody up there and I got more plants donated to me. I've taken photos, put it in the paper, sent them to the police, sent them to the Prime Minister, Premier. It hasn't stopped me at all. When I was talking to the bloke out the front, I said, why didn't you stop when you flew over 2 days ago? I said, I waved to you. I said, you waved back to me. And he said, yeah. He said, but we weren't looking for plants that day. I said, yeah, mate, but I'm standing in the middle of the crop. He said, yeah, but we weren't looking for plants. I said, mate, I was standing in the middle of the crop.
A lot of the growers, they were true counterculturalists. They came out of the 60s and 70s, and a lot of them had a political agenda.
What the world needs now is drug L-O-R-E, not drug L-A-W.
They were growing dope and they were selling it, but there was politics behind it as well.
The commercial aspect to cannabis does detract from the overall picture. Crops do attract the police. They often come and have a look at my plants with the helicopters. I wave to them, they wave back.
I had them there for an hour and a half over my property in November. It's terrorizing. You put a damn police helicopter 50 meters over your house and see how you feel. And this is when there's nothing out there among those orchards and stuff. It's absolutely persecution. You look at their modus operandi, what they're interested in is keeping their helicopter up in the air and boys and their toys.
They pick off a few growers here and there for their media releases at the end of the week. The police go away and life continues.
Okay, we've just had the police helicopter go over. They've missed me by about 3 weeks.
Cannabis that I grow is not on the streets. It's for myself and for people who have medical conditions.
The north coast of New South Wales seems to be the cancer capital of the world. And I say that flippantly only because every time we work up in that area on our cannabis eradication programs, quite a lot of the people that we speak with who have small crops say they're using it for pain relief and medical purposes.
We get phone calls, several phone calls every day from people with cancer particularly, because the word's out, it can give you some relief. Older people especially come to Nimbin and never tried pot before, want to try it.
More incidentally than anything, we'll find people with very small crop sites that are obviously for personal use, but as they're cultivating a prohibited drug, they also end up in the mix and and are charged. When an outdoor plant is worth $2,000 and an indoor plant worth $5,000, I'm sure that there's certainly some scope for diversion to the illicit market, regardless of how sick you are.
$2,000 a plant, I've got to get those bloody plants. Really? My God, $5,000 a plant indoors. My God, I don't know what this bloke's talking about. We're growing in Australia somewhere around 2,000 tonnes of cannabis every year, right? 2,000 tonnes. The interdiction efforts of our police force do nothing.
We could spend the whole summer up on the north coast and find plants every day. Are we having an impact? Is the next question perhaps? Maybe I'll preempt that. Yes, we are. If we didn't go up there, the place would just be overrun with cannabis.
He's right. If they didn't come, there'd be more cannabis, but it's pushed probably 90% of New South Wales cannabis indoors, which is not as healthy a product.
These are people that need the medicine. They're standing up for themselves.
Dispense with the law.
I've had Crohn's disease for 10 years. The only medicine that's actually helped and treat my condition is the medical tincture. Got rid of my pain totally. It reduced my visits to the toilet, whereas I used to go about 20 times a day. A lot of the times I wouldn't even make it to the toilet. Yeah, it's been a struggle. I've had chemotherapy.
Stuff called adrenalate, morphine, and Fosamax, Entacort, prednisolone, methotrexate, methicillazine, and they weren't working. They'll make me sick.
He was given a 12-month sentence. Its maximum security is where he's at. So I've made an appointment to see Andrew Stoner to talk about how we're going to move ahead on this. Not a lot of people turned up, but I mean, we didn't need a lot of people. Hopefully when the judge hears the case and everything that's gone on over the last 5 years, he'll actually see that, you know, this is fair income and it shouldn't be in jail. Just because they've got Tony locked up, they needn't think for a second that Mullaways is not going ahead, because it is, absolutely.
This flower is covered in a very, very thick coat of resin, and the cannabinoids that this plant produces are contained within that resin. This is the product that you obtain after we've done the process of extracting the resins from the plant, a potent cancer-killing product. There's strong clinical evidence to definitively prove that this cannabis oil has a profound impact in killing off fully a basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and most excitingly with recent times, the AIDS Kaposi sarcoma. There are no guarantees in life, as with cannabis oil and cancer, there are no guarantees either, but there seems to be an overwhelming number of successful treatments that are coming to light. There's a very good likelihood with some cancers of actually giving you a positive result. Patients come to me and other good people like me all over Australia and all over the world looking for help with cannabis as a medicine.
The nurse, she came in and said, "You are pregnant, you're 3 months pregnant," which I knew. She said, "I'm really sorry, but you've got leukemia as well." Then after that, I just went straight up to the cancer ward and they started treatment. 80% chance of relapsing and 70% chance of dying.
They said she had like 3 days to live if she didn't start chemo straight away, and she had to have a termination, and it was just horrible. As soon as I got home on the first night, I just started searching the internet, looking for cancer cures, natural cancer cures, something that would help with the cancer, and I found it. It's all out there. I just couldn't believe what I was reading. I just started messaging people, asking if they can help me, if they knew where I could get some, how could I do this. I had a lot of response from a lot of lovely people. And then I met Mark, and he had a surprise for Rochelle.
I'd like to give you a full treatment.
Oh my God. I can't accept that.
It's for you. And,
You're going to make me cry.
the people that provided the source material for this are here, who aren't on camera.
This is medicine at its finest.
But it's a team effort, and we just hope that it works for you. The extraordinary thing is, because of the war on drugs, is that The value of this in Australia, in dollar terms, is $3,000. To give a patient a medicine for free, we're not selling a cure. What we're doing is we're just giving hope. It should have a little Australian flag sticker, Australian made, and a big tick.
Okay.
So that's the Aussie way.
I was really freaking out. And the doctor's come over and he said, your bloods are almost like a normal person. We just want to know what you've been doing.
If need be, we can increase the dose. So we have the resources to throw behind you for that.
Thank you
if
so
we can.
much.
Don't thank me. I'm just thanking you that you've given us the inspiration to follow our passions and be able to provide you with this medicine.
They didn't want to listen. Like when I told them it's cannabis oil, you need to look it up. The next time I went in, the same doctor that I spoke to came up to me and said, I looked it all up. I'm on board with it now. I believe what you told me is true.
For killing cancer, you can't just use the tincture. What you need for treating the particular issues is the THC. That's what the anecdotal evidence is, and the bulk of the science is supporting it.
She was laying in bed so sick, just laying there really sick all the time, and she'd say, I need to go and have a smoke. So we'd take her out to the car to have a smoke, bring her back in, and she was fine. She was eating. Nurses came running out after her. You can't do that, you can't go out. And the only time she'd eat was when she went out and had a smoke and came back in, and then she'd have something to
The
eat.
crazy thing, there are literally probably hundreds of scientific studies that support the nausea being dealt with by cannabis.
When I smoked when I was younger, Mum flipped out completely. Like she was going to kick me out of home and everything, and she completely flipped out. So now it's a complete turnaround.
My ex-husband was always smoking pot, just didn't like it at all. Just thought, nah, all you do is sit there and smoke pot all day, I'm over it. We ended up separating because of it.
They have a parliamentary inquiry in New South Wales. The mandate is to go forth and acquire knowledge to inform the Parliament. They were given definitive evidence about cannabis killing cancer, and they didn't tell the Parliament. They didn't tell the Australian people. Why?
We should be taxing and regulating cannabis. We know how to do that. We could start doing that tomorrow, and we should start doing that.
I really urge people to look at it as an alternative to using hard drugs.
We should be able to provide cannabis for these people without turning cartwheels. After all, the recreational use of morphine is banned, yet we use bucket loads of morphine to relieve pain and suffering and misery.
The three traditionally best painkillers on the planet, the opium poppy, the coca plant and the cannabis plant, all illegal. Look at the market in heroin, cocaine and cannabis.
Someone's benefiting from cannabis being illegal, and you can have a look at your pharmaceutical companies, you can have a look at private prisons, you can have a look at the health industry.
It's just business. There's all these people making a fortune out of controlling pain management.
People are making money from keeping cannabis illegal.
I think there's big powers to be around the world that don't want it legalised. Like there's great forces for fear and love, right? I'm on the side of love.
Off you go. Does that feel better? There we go.
The local children's hospital that we go to, they were writing it up on Hunter's medication chart. His doctor was, his neurologist, and everybody was administering it because it's on the chart. Feels better. Yeah, Heidi's coming back in for a cuddle. And the health minister intervened, saying to the neurologist, you cannot put this on the medication chart. If it is on the premises of this hospital, the child will be removed. It means if my son's an inpatient, he's not supposed to have the medicinal cannabis. So now I'm going to have to sneak it, which I will. He's not going to not have it. But yeah, it's quite sad because all the doctors, I've realised all doctors are supportive of it. The people that aren't, the people who sit behind the nice little desks making the rules who don't have anything to do with the sick people. So, yeah.
Popular opinion about cannabis is changing very rapidly, and nowhere more so than in the United States. The desire to tax and regulate it and the desire to make it available for medicinal purposes are now starting to spread throughout the world, and it's only a matter of time before that happens in Australia.
And it really is remarkable to be at an event like this today. Thanks to many brave Australian families, here we are, in a position where we can now present the facts on medicinal cannabis and showcase much of the incredible body of work which is invigorating the debate across the world.
Well, here we are at the United in Compassion conference. The people that are here at this conference today are not the hippie activists that Australia has seen for some time. The people that are here today are everyday regular Australians. You've got the mums, the dads, the kiddies. With the youngsters that are here in particular, there are two that come to mind. One of them is young Joshua. He has a very, very nasty brain cancer. It's too deep to operate on and it's non-responsive to radiation and chemo, so really cannabis was the last roll of the dice for this young man. 12 months ago, doctors said that he shouldn't be really here with us anymore, that he should have already passed, and despite his high dose of cannabis medicines that he's on, the youngster's running around and he's fit and he's healthy, and apart from the cancer, you wouldn't know that the youngster is sick. There's also Cooper. He has a very, very nasty seizure problem called Dravet's syndrome. This is intractable seizures that often results in death.
Cooper was born perfectly healthy, and at 4 weeks old he contracted meningitis. As a result of this, he developed cerebral palsy and epilepsy. We had countless ambulance trips. He was always in and out of hospital. Basically, we were living in hospital. The end was coming. We sort of felt that he didn't have long left. Basically, prepare for the end of his life, and we tried the cannabis to keep him comfortable, and instead of keeping him comfortable for the remainder of his life, it's given him a new lease on life. Cooper, he changed before our eyes. 15 minutes after his first dose, he was interacting with us in ways that he hadn't before.
That's a boy.
It's made us a family. We're no longer split up by one of us staying in hospital with Cooper. We're able to do everyday family things, and it's given him a quality of life that he otherwise would never have had. It was difficult choosing to use cannabis for our boy, but in hindsight, we wish we had done it sooner. It may have potentially stopped some of the brain damage that the seizures would have caused.
Even when I put my 33-year operational police hat on, that the case for medicinal cannabis is sort of overwhelming, irresistible, uncontestable. So to suggest that the case studies we've just listened to aren't persuasive enough to allow governments to make decisions and take action, to me, is mind-boggling.
Epilepsy isn't something that goes away, and these other rare seizure disorders. So these mothers, they're looking at their child who's very, very ill, knowing that you have a medicine that may help, but that because of the laws and the fear that's generated by society, you're too scared to use it. What this group does, it gives away a simple and a precision way to be able to make these tinctures at home safely using food-grade alcohol. You can buy an ounce of pot for $350, and you can make 4 bottles that will last you 6 months. So it's a very powerful thing. Why mums and dads in Australia aren't allowed to have a plant in their backyard that they can process to make their own medicine to save their own child's life, I just don't understand that.
It's a case of life and death.
We just heard Abby's mum, Cherie, saying that without cannabis tincture, Abby's seizures will get so bad that she may well die, and we also heard that her supplier was raided.
Abby's supplier says now that he can't help her, he fears the worst.
This child's on a ticking time bomb at the moment. She's got 5 weeks left to live. I don't see that somebody with a gun telling me to stop saving the life of this baby is the answer. I think the answer comes from politicians taking braver stances and being more honest with the people.
Mike Baird's comments yesterday that he's moving to settle a set of guidelines governing the exercise of discretion for medicinal cannabis is a very positive thing.
We're very close to finalising those guidelines. I'm very thankful to police and the work they've done, because what they have shown is they have been exercising discretion.
But that's an individual discretion, and to leave that out there to be interpreted separately and differently by individual officers in situations like this is an unsatisfactory situation. My experience had told me more and more convincingly as I went through it that law enforcement with its best efforts, no matter that it got more effective, more efficient, more sophisticated, using better technology, etc., still made no difference. And in fact that we often through that process aggravated the harms rather than minimised them or reduced them.
Basically we woke up one morning to a knock on the door, 3 police officers standing there. In hindsight, it was really good for the cannabis debate that parents were actually arrested for treating a sick child with a illegal substance. It brought the politicians into it. They could no longer ignore it and sit on their hands.
I had absolutely no knowledge that cannabis could be used for medicinal purposes. I always thought cannabis would be used for, out there sort of factor,
Like a lot of medical practitioners, I didn't know a lot about the potential medicinal benefit of cannabis. Now I've got a view around illicit drugs more generally that we've got it wrong, we've got the whole system wrong, that many of the things that we're doing are actually creating a lot more harm than actually protecting people. Individuals who are using cannabis for recreational purposes, who are then subject to a criminal penalty, I think that's where it's a huge mistake, and it's something we do need to change.
We probably will refine our legislation and make it typically Australian by screwing it all up.
Prohibition will end, within my lifetime I'll see it, and we'll be free to grow the weed. I'm sure I can still make some money out of growing it, even if it is legalised.
Are you ready, police force? Are you ready, polite force? Have these guys been drug tested?
I think we've completely underestimated how much disrespect, violence, crime the war on drugs has created. It's a war on our own people.
We've now got a policy that is clearly expensive, ineffective and counterproductive. It's time we scrap this policy, and there is nothing that should stop us doing this today. We should do this right now.
It's a game which is unsustainable, and it's a game which is unnecessary.
You've got to change with the times. You've got to go ahead and listen to the people that want to move ahead, not the ones that are stuck in this bloody, brain dead situation.
Industrial, medical and recreational. Those 3 areas of cannabis use are important for Australia. They're relevant in Australia. Probably should be debated a bit more.
We're not about corporatising this industry. We're all about empowering individual people here in Australia to be able to grow their own medicine, their own plants to make their own children well. And I think that if everybody has a joint, get high, realise that's the only way to go. God bless you all.
Now, there was a time not long ago when smoking a joint was fine. But don't get caught with dope these days, it's become a hanging crime. They got helicopter gunships, video trail bikes, 4-wheel drives in line, while the smack rolls in container ships and no bugger even gets fined. Talk about marijuana, Australiana, cheaper than grog and safer than pills, make you sing like La Stupenda. Marijuana, a definitely top banana, a greatest craze since the disco days. You can buy it from your nearest farmer. Have a turkey. Hey!
Mother of light, I watch you flow. In the forest you bring green, reflect the colors of my dream. Reflect the colors of my dream.